Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarwick. Sejohn?
Hey, everybody! It's we're recording a little later in the day than usual, and it's like weirdly throwing me.
I wanted to start this episode by saying I love an afternoon recording. I don't. I really like recording early on my Sunday and then not having to worry about anything else. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is because I have the data now. Also, just so that all the cards are on the table, I'm going to say 15 minutes before we started recording, I fully aspirated a pint of Guinness, an ounce of Jameson, and an ounce of Bailey's Irish Cream. Because I'm not sure, like, what should you call them? We call them Dublin drops in the house, but you're not supposed to say.
No, I know, right?
Yeah.
I don't
You're
know.
not supposed to say Irish car bomb. I will say that, and it's just, but we've never come up with anything else. I mean, the thing is, don't ever order it in Ireland. But if you're in Ireland, why would you ever order it anyway? It is a distinctly American shot, but that doesn't mean that we need to call it something that makes light of something that happened. What do you say, about 50 years ago, Sejohn?
I mean, much sooner than that.
Oh, I mean,
unfortunately, but like the name has been around for forever. Yes,
yeah.
But yeah, no.
No, I mean, I guess I think of the 70s, but it was going on.
Yeah, no, I get it. For some people, the Troubles are still a thing. I'm just like...
True, that's fair. That's the Troubles that were big enough for America to be like, hey, what's going on over there?
Yeah.
All right, we won't make the third Godfather movie until the 90s. You guys have 20 years to sort it out.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's and it's a thing, and like people died, so it's not a culturally sensitive name for what that shot is, but it's flippin' delicious.
Say that with such disdain. It's a fair critique.
Well, no. I guess the disdain is for people who still use it.
Yeah,
right? Like that. Like it's one of those situations. I understand that there isn't some grand council of bartenders that meets every year to make sure that all the names are uniform across the board. Because if there were, it'd be a lot easier to go into bars and order things. Right? That one's
what
on
exactly
me.
Is a wet Jimmy. It's just a shot of Jameson.
Okay. Well, you
I never figured out why that guy called them wet Jimmies.
Oh,
so bartenders sometimes just like fucking with you.
Was it a bartender who called it a wet Jimmy?
It was on the board. It was written on the board as the special for the night was $2 wet Jimmies. And the question was, what the fuck's a wet Jimmy? And he just said it's a shot of Jameson. And we're just like, okay.
Well, is Jimmy's slang for prophylactics? Because I'm not going to say condom. Is Jimmy slang for prophylactics? I'm pretty sure it is. Jimmy Cap, right? Yeah. So, like, a wet Jimmy, it's a shot of whiskey because, you're going to get whiskey dick.
Yeah. There's
in addition to this.
Liquid prophylactic.
Yeah, it's a wet Jimmy.
Oh, man.
Yes, it's the inside kind for you.
Yeah, no, as a man. I understand. Look, the idea of, like, it's a play on the concept of the wet shot. Like, I get all of that. I understand where the name came from. The point was, at the end of the day, why did he need to dedicate time to saying that and not just write $2 shots of Jameson? It wasn't like a mixed drink. There was no higher concept. It was just Jameson.
Would you critique Bob Belcher for naming his burgers? How dare you critique this bartender for naming his shots?
If he ever served just a plain ass burger on a bun and came up with some clever ass name for it, then I would see where you were coming from. But it's the exact opposite of what I'm talking about. Is that he creates burgers that have a billion toppings on them and then names them creatively based off of the toppings upon them or like the meat in them. Like there's always a hook. There's no hook to a shot of Jameson.
I mean, sometimes the hook is that it's served on lettuce. Sometimes it's just the cheese that he used. It's not Bob Belcher always using 7 different ingredients to create the burger of the day. There's a hook. I will give you that there's a hook. You know what the hook is? We just dedicated 3 fucking minutes to this bartender from how long ago? When
Yeah, I
did the
don't know.
wet Jimmy incident happen?
I was at a conference in Pennsylvania. We had gone to a club and it was a really awesome club. They served the Pennsylvania special was what I was told it was, which were shots of whiskey with a PBR. Or the other special on the board was $2 wet Jimmys, which was I guess just the whiskey shot. Basically the same special just minus the PBR.
I mean, you could have the PBR, you could not have the PBR. That's why, because you just got a wet Jimmy.
There was a guy that came in that this bar was so awesome. So we were there because of a jazz band was playing that was made up of people from the conference and stuff. So we went to go see them play, and they were phenomenal, and the bar was great. And in the corner, like 20 minutes after I got there, God knows if this is something that happens on a regular basis, some person walks in, this like older dude walks in, goes to the back of the bar, pulls a bunch of tables together, plops down a crock pot, and then plops down all of these ingredients and does up like a freaking like clam gumbo in the corner, and then slaps a sign up, Bowls Gumbo, like $2. And like people went over and just started buying gumbo from this dude in the back of this bar.
You don't know. Was he fully licensed by the state, Mr.
I don't
Plow?
know
I
anything
don't.
about what happened. It was a wild night.
I don't know if I'd
You
eat
ever want-
clam gumbo from the back of a bar. I would.
You know how
Let's
they
be
joke
honest.
about how like business conferences are when business people get like wild. Now imagine that with just a bunch of artists. They're already a bunch of uninhibited bastards. Then give them like a corporate account to go to a different city on for a night. Like people get fucking nuts. And we ended up in some of the weirdest places.
What
I
I
never
will
told you guys about the pizza nightclub I ended up in.
Oh yeah. I guess that's something I've always liked about conferences with artists is the band that gets themselves booked at a local bar during the conference. Remember when I'm gonna call them G119? Oh, G116, because I don't know what their band name was. But G116 was from the band, quote, short for gay elf sex. Which, does that make G116 better as a name for this band? I honestly couldn't tell you. But they, for one of the Irene Ryans that was in Leominster, Massachusetts, the town where I was born, the kid, right? I'm going to stick to those, right? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Got his band, Gay Elf Sex, booked at a local bar, and I had gone up just for funds. And I ended up being like the shepherd to this bar because I'm from the area. Like even though I moved out of there when I was 9 years old, it didn't change the fact that I was still going to that area for certain things. Like I had friends and relations in that area, so I
The
knew
first
the
weekends we
area.
ever hung out, you dragged me up there to go get hot wings.
Yep, that's very true. That's like I want to be friends with Sejohn forever. I need to baptize him in the boneless border wing sauce that I'm pretty sure is just sweet chili sauce.
Yeah,
Like
the
years
more we
later.
grow up, the more that we realize.
But at the time, sweet Thai chili sauce was not a thing you could get everywhere. So like,
Especially
it was
not at a Borders wings place. Like the place sold itself as almost Tex-Mexy in like a weird way, like soft Tex-Mex, I guess.
And that place, border, on the border, I don't even know what it's called. Borders is what we called it, colloquially. Deckers, and then everybody I ever dragged up there. When I found out that they were closing, I went up there and I finally did something I had always wanted to do, and that was eat the worm, because they had to eat the worm board.
Man, Jesus.
And I'm
Out of
like-
an actual bottle of tequila, or was it some like
Actual
fancy-
bottle of tequila. It was the
Oof.
coolest, craziest thing. I'm like, I looked at my friend who's like, I can't drink anymore. I'm like, cool. So you know what you're going to be? My designated driver. And I'm like, we could take your car. We could take my car. I will drive there. I just know I cannot drive back because
Not
my
after that,
plan
no.
is to drink a bottle of tequila and eat a worm. And he's like,
like some of those worms can have supposedly psychoactive effects on top of the fact that they are super like infused with the alcohol.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
there's like man, oh my god.
it was a hell of a night.
Ugh.
It was a hell of a night.
I can imagine.
I got the last shirt that they had. You're the last one to who's gonna get a shirt for eating the worm. And I'm like, that is the saddest and coolest thing I've ever heard. The owner has moved over. They have a new place in now it's in Fitchburg, closer to that bar that we went to, which is the whole point of the story. Because I thought it was so funny that he's like, yeah, my band's playing, and it's like people don't go see your band when they play close to like the college.
Yeah, right.
What are they like? It's just an excuse to have people go. And we went, and I don't know if I don't tell the names, I think it's fine. But like, there was a professor buying everybody drinks.
Yeah, no, I mean, like here's the thing is that's the other thing that conferences do at this level is this is the one place where the grad students truly do get to be on the same level as like the professors and stuff because everybody there is just a struggling artist trying to get their shit heard.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, the lines blur when you go to these kinds of things, and it's the same reason why people talk about like conferences or when people get crazy. This is I gotta say this must be like a purely American thing, right? Like this idea that we get so little time away from our work selves that even when we were on what is technically a work style function, like the fact that we're not like in the same building, it's so novel to us that we like lose ourselves, right? Like we lose our shit. I don't hear about people like in other countries that have the business conference excursion, like the Aspen weekend that, oh man, we the Catalina wine mixer, like none of that shit seems to exist outside of our country. Maybe I'm just ignorant to it, but it feels like it's a very purely American
There's a
thing.
whole comedy movie about that called Unfinished Business with Vince Vaughn, Dave Franco. Some might say the better
Is that
Franco,
where they get stuck in like the IKEA?
and Tom
Like,
Wilkinson. They do not
right?
get stuck in an IKEA.
Where he has to sleep? No, like
But
the
he-
sleeping arrangement for him is like in this like glass box. It's like part of the deal is he's like on display.
Yeah, so originally he's booked in a hostel, and he's like, I can't get any work done here. He calls his travel agent, because the whole joke of that movie is that they're dinosaurs anyway.
Right.
So, except for Dave Franco, Mike Pancake. His last name is Pancake. It's delicious.
It's such a weird movie. Like
I love- I
delightfully
think that-
charming, if I remember it
I
correctly,
love
right?
that movie. I absolutely
Yeah,
love it.
like
Tom Wilkinson
like
is
Vince
the third,
Vaughn
yeah.
actually putting in the work as like a likable dude, not like he always ends up being likable in spite of himself in other movies, but one of the few times where he's actually just kind of a likable guy.
Yeah, he has all these issues. He just is really good. Go watch Unfinished Business. I think I own like 4 copies of it because every time I see it for sale, usually for $2 or less at like a used DVD store, I'm like, I'm going to buy you because I'm not certain that I own you.
Yeah.
Because it's really a delightful little film. But yeah, he winds up in that like art installation where it's like American Businessman because
Right.
of how novel it is that like that's what he's doing.
Oh,
To
he's like
them.
working
Yeah,
constantly.
because he's in the hostel and he's trying to get work and he can't get it done, so he calls his
But he
travel
does
agent.
end up in like a glass box on
He
like
ends
the
up-
street, like on display for
Yeah.
people, right?
It's
Isn't
in a
that, like, the
museum.
bit
It's
of
at
that
least he's
movie?
not outside. He is in a museum, but he is a living art piece. And they're like, yeah,
But
you
yeah,
don't,
right? Like
yeah.
like I feel like this idea that like the getaway from work like is just so unique to us that even in these seconds when it's still technically like you're still professionals, you're still on the clock in some way. People do some wild shit at conferences because hey, we're at the conference, right?
It's like spring break too. It's spring break. It doesn't happen all the time, but like one of the cool things about spring break is that you're seeing all your college people in a completely uninhibited environment. That's what the work conference is.
Yeah,
It is
yeah.
your coworkers, so people that you already have established bonds and relationships with, in an environ where there is like no holds barred, and that's
I know. It's just that like life should be no hold. You know what I'm saying?
Yo,
Like-
no, life. Yeah, we live life.
That's the
I
sad sense of
can't-
it that we need to create a space for this is all I'm lamenting.
Can't live
That's
it.
all.
Can't live that right now. If I look too deeply into that chasm, because I glance at it all the time, it's out in the corner of my eye. If I ever were to stare directly into it, I don't know, man. It's
Well, then let's get lost in some bullshit. Hey, Dev.
lost in some bullshit on the fringe.
Yeah, I can't believe that Marvel pulled a fast one on me.
Oh, Marvel pulled the fast one on. I didn't.
Well, they did. They pulled a big old fast one on me. I didn't pick up on the fact that the words ant and man
Are in
were so
Quantumania?
perfectly in Quantumania.
All right, spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and
That's
not
the big one for me.
not big spoilers. Not big spoilers. What Sejohn just talked about when it happened in the movie, that was the best part of that fucking movie for me. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it.
I feel like here's what was the way I was thinking about it. It really was hitting a lot of the really good like family adventure films that we don't get a lot of nowadays,
Right.
right? Like I was thinking of like Journey to the Center of the Earth, or even like like it's gonna sound really dumb that but Honey I Shrunk the Kids, right? Like
Why?
those kinds of crazy like adventure style sci-fi films where the science is kind of wibbly wobbly, like basically like it's the reason we love Doctor Who is because we're not getting it in many other places, right? Like and the fact that it wants to live in that world I adore, and there were moments in this movie that I love were just great, were great. And fucking Paul Rudd could carry a pile of shit up a mountain and roll it down the other side, and as long as he smiled into the camera at some point, I would watch it a million times over. Like the ways in which his charm kind of carries some of the more cringier bits of this movie is unbelievable. So there is good stuff to be had in this film,
And
but
that's
yeah,
one side of the
I
film that you described. The problem is the other side of the film exists. And that it like all of the Paul Rudd stuff in this movie. Oh my god, from like a little bit more spoilery here, but again, like I'm not going to go deep. Like welcome back Cotter as your first bit of music in this, and like I'm like this is going to be really good. And then they did the dual narrative thing, and one of the dual narratives I really cared about. Even the thing that some people are like, I don't understand why Baby Legs is here. I'm like, that really worked for me on like a significant level. The
yeah, how
problem
much are we
is,
not spoiling? Because you're dancing around stuff, and I don't want to dance around stuff, but I will if that's what you feel like we should do. So
so
I'm
if
just
we're not going to
clarifying
do a
that.
full episode, the movie has been
Okay.
out long enough for DC to release a movie. So I think if we're going to talk about it, the problem with me is that I saw the movie exactly a month ago. So
Yeah.
it's not hyper fresh in my mind. I just know that. So we took off the Friday to go see Ant-Man, right? I had an appointment, and then I'm like, I'll go see Ant-Man after it. This will be a wonderful thing. So the whole family went. For the whole family that goes to the movie, my father did not go with us. And in fact, my father was at the time in a rehab unit. So, because he had spent some time in the hospital, because he had some complications with his chemo drugs. All that's out there now. I don't feel crazy about it. And I feel okay talking about it because happiness of happiness, he has been home now for a week and a half. So, like, everything is
That's a win.
good, right? That's a win, right? And, do they, like, real bad reaction to the chemo, but his M proteins are at a 0 right now. So, like, yeah, chemo is killing you, but it also kills the cancer. As long as you can cling to life while it does it, I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
It's
It's the devastating state of medicine in the
oh
world.
yeah,
But yes.
no, we could maybe cure it, right? If it wasn't so goddamn profitable. That was Rex Morgan, MD, ladies and gentlemen. So we do that, and then because we're all together, everybody went and saw the movie. We're going to go visit my father in his rehab facility, and at the time, his rehab facility was about an hour away. So we had an hour in the car after seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, where we could talk about what just happened, and it was just kind of a bummer. Like the whole car was just like, I really wanted to like it, and I enjoyed so much of this side of it, but there's a whole other side that just doesn't work. And like even like trying to search for straws, I wasn't as distraught as I was after I saw Wakanda Forever. I will say that. Wakanda Forever, I feel like just completely betrayed multiple characters in order to push forward its narrative. And I'll talk about that forever and ever. You've seen the movie, right? The movie has been out long enough that it's on Disney Plus. Spoilers for Wakanda Forever. Shuri, when she abandons that woman who is like a casualty in the rescue mission to save her, felt so out of character for everything that led up to that moment in the movie that I felt like my time had been wasted. Like I very rarely feel that way when I'm watching a movie, but I'm just like all the character development and everything you showed me over the last hour and a half of this movie was just undone in that moment where
She does get dragged away. She does try to help her, and she gets dragged away. You're talking about the woman that ends up dying in the.
yes.
I wait. Yeah, without. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like she's not like fighting to do exactly that. She just.
I just wish that she could have gotten a Komoyo bead. If she puts a Komoyo bead in that, it's her trying. All she's like is, I need a Komoyo bead and I can keep her from dying. Or we go to war. Like, she is completely there saying what it is. And the fact that she, like, ends up going with Nakia really bothered me. I guess it'd be, like, one thing if Nakia knocked her out. Like, they don't have some sort of crazy Wakandan knockout gas for situations where, like, a member of the royal family is acting against what the guards would think is their thing. Like, it really bothered me. And then, like, that sat with me for a while watching that movie. Ant-Man, I never felt like my time was wasted. I feel like they wasted some characters. I felt like they wasted some potential. I felt like there was a huge imbalance between the two halves of the movie that existed. Which I guess it's time to talk about that if we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what sides you're applying what to, because yeah,
the Pym family, Robinson, really, like, that whole thing just was dour, and I just can't imagine that Michelle Pfeiffer, like, oh, I'm not going to share what I've been doing for the last 30 years. Now, I know that for some of that time she was blipped, right? But that they're working on stuff in the quantum realm. They're still doing research into the quantum realm. It's not just Cassie who's doing it. The fact that she never shares that there's a society down there that she interacted with just seems super out of character. And then once they're down there and you don't really have the option to ignore it anymore, the fact that she's like, no, just follow me, just trust me, it'll be fine. Like, have the conversation with your scientifically minded family.
yeah. So I mean, what they're doing with her is they're very obviously playing with concepts of trauma, right? And this idea that she's having issues revisiting that trauma, even up to the point where Evangeline Lilly eventually, once Michelle Pfeiffer, once she explains what's going on, like we then see, Evangeline Lilly say the exact words of along the line of, like, I understand why you're hurting. Like, she's using almost like out of the book phrases in dealing with a traumatized persons, right? Like, and so that's the big thing that they're doing with her, and it leads to these really upsetting moments of exactly what you're talking about, where they've just been literally attacked. Like, they are in danger. It's no longer danger is on its way. We are in danger. We need to know what's going on so we can get out of danger. And she still refuses to say anything. And it's hard because they're trying to do this whole thing with her where they're trying to deal with the idea of, like, PTSD, traumatic incidents, and all of this stuff. And they're trying to handle it delicately, because this movie wants to kind of have its cake and eat its too in a lot of ways, where it wants to have the family drama, but also have the family be together. They want to have the traumatic persons, but they also want the traumatic persons to be getting the exact help they need. So, like, you're getting kind of hit with these bigger things that could be happening, but then, like, there's no conflict to the way those are being handled, because there's plenty of other conflict in the larger story, right? So, like, it works for me on one level with all of the stuff going on with Paul Rudd and Cassie. So all of the stuff that's going on with him and Cassie, and he's like, and the idea that he feels like he's an absent father, and she has those feelings as well, but they also both acknowledge that those feelings are actually kind of ridiculous considering everything that's gone on in their lives. But you can't help but feel those things, right? Like that whole thing works, and they have those moments where they lose themselves, but then they forgive each other and they talk to each other, and all of this amazing stuff you never see on screen, especially not in a Marvel movie, right? Like, the ways in which these two talk to each other, awesome. And so they're trying to apply that same kind of love and care and touch and new approach to this whole idea of this traumatized persons that, like, they need to get this information out of, and it's just not working. They're allowing the movie is handling her with kid gloves in a way that the situation and the fact that it's a movie and things need to move forward, like, it was just the way that it was, like, slowing the movie down, because there was just the same conversation 3-4 times in a row of, like, what aren't you telling us, what aren't you telling us? And it's like, at some point, why would she just not tell them? It's too late to keep anything a secret. And, like, you feel insensitive, like, when you look at what they're trying to do with it, but, like, it really does slow the movie down.
Well, it also it does that thing that's also really weird with Marvel movies, where it kind of feels like it conflicts and wholly changes everything. Like, if she were just down there alone for 30 years, which is kind of what we were led to believe, right? Then like, some of the stuff makes sense, but no, like she was interacting with the society and she was doing all of these other things. So it really feels revisionist to the history of the MCU. And that's okay, right? They do that all the time. That's what you're gonna do.
I would say that if she had been more important to anything other than just the last Ant-Man movie, like you could
True,
say that
that's a
it
good
was a
point.
revision of the MCU, but for like, what effect has her and her past had on anything since the last Ant-Man movie?
Well, I guess the way that she talks about everything that she's been doing, it feels like she's been alone down there doing
I think the
it.
bigger thing
Yeah.
is that you may be looking at is what it does is it feels revisionist to all of everybody's experience going down to the quantum realm. Even in this very movie, Michael Douglas, who has spent time in the quantum realm, goes, "Why have I never seen this?" Right? Like,
Yeah.
don't they all get? Oh no, they get blipped, which I guess is in the quantum realm. But like, Paul
They
Rudd
get
was down
blipped
in the
while he's down in the quantum realm.
but he's down in the quantum realm. How come this was nothing he ever saw before?
Yeah.
Or we've seen people in other movies enter quantum areas, and this idea of people existing within them is cool. And I'm not saying that like it can't happen. You just have to understand that that's the kind of logic leaps this movie wants to make in order to have a good time, which
Right.
is hard to get on board with after 20 movies, right?
Well, I mean, especially Paul Rudd was down there for 5 years. He didn't run into anybody like
Exactly.
in that whole time. Like he was
Well,
gone for 5 years.
Well, I do think though. I do think the idea is that for him, it didn't feel like 5 years. I think we're supposed to believe that he went in, everybody got blipped, he couldn't figure out how to get out, and then he got out, and it wasn't that long for him. It's just because of the quantum state of
Right,
him,
because
5 years
he's
out
all
here.
like sort of thrown off by it. That's okay. Good point there. Solid point there. But I mean,
But the idea that we have visited the quantum world so many times,
yeah,
to then now introduce this idea that there's so much going on within it that it could have its own worlds within it is cool. And some movie had to break this seal.
yeah, because it exists in the comics. It's true.
Yeah,
Like,
right. It feels like this movie becomes kind of that right now, and I think in a lot of ways was treated that way. Is like, this is the movie we're going to dump a bunch of exposition into. It's not going to be solid in terms of structure. But hey, we'll put Paul Rudd smiling in it in a couple of scenes, and it'll still do gangbusters.
half of this movie's going to be fantastic. I mean,
But
did
it
it do
does feel like this
gangbusters
movie
though?
becomes a
Like,
dumping ground.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's totally a dumping ground. It's meant to introduce Kang in a larger level, and I think that they kind of botched that in terms of this character that I'm familiar with from the comics. And I don't want to be like one of those actually people, but
I don't know. As
it's
somebody that is not too familiar with him, I'm very curious to see where he's going. I'm more curious to hear more about him in the Loki sense than I am anywhere else, but that's just because of what Loki did with him.
yeah, because well, that's not technically Kang. Like that's the weird thing about it. Like he who survives is the version of that probability, like you DNA that is
Kang
able
the
to.
Conqueror is not him.
Yeah,
He's just
he's not
yeah.
Kang the Conqueror. He's the one who conquers all of those versions of himself that say this is what needs to be done for everything to work, because he's aware of what he's capable of, so he just shuts off all of those probabilities of him basically going nuts and banana crazy, right? So that's what he does, which is, I mean, if we're going to talk about trauma, if the fifth wave, they're not called waves, cycle, what are this called? What are they called? Phase. If the fifth phase is going to be dealing with trauma, I'm kind of there, especially when you look at things like Ragnarok, which was Thor dealing with trauma and loss and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's a cool thing that works, and I guess that's where it really where it loses me, because I felt kind of bad when you're talking about like the trauma, that PTSD that Janet Van Dyne is experiencing, and it's like I hadn't really considered that, but also when I am looking at, there's a lot of heavy traumatic stuff on display with Scott and Cassie, and it's being handled really well. So it's a weird mirror to hold up to it when it's like, and it doesn't seem like, and again, we haven't seen a lot of Janet, but Janet does seem like a scientifically minded person, and it does seem like she'd be the kind of person who'd be like, this is hard for me, but yeah, after the third time where I'm like, we don't have time to talk about it, like, no, but you need to realize that what you're doing is more harmful than good. You're acting outside of character, and there hasn't been that much character for you.
I also have to wonder though, like how much of it is timing within the story and just the amount of times they literally had her say. Like, I think the script itself is one of the weakest parts of this whole thing. The story is actually like bizarre and weird and amazing, and I love the like weird like adventure sci-fi aspect of like they're not aliens but basically alien people. Like all of that stuff is super fun. The dialogue from moment to moment is a fucking crapshoot in this movie. And so I wonder how much of what you're talking about, of what you're saying, could have been resolved by maybe just having her use literally different words, or maybe not have the conversation 3 times, have it be one, the first time, and then have it be later when she inevitably breaks. Like, we didn't need to hear her keep reiterating it over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, like if it were progressive, like the first time this, or like, no, I spent a lot of time down here. I'm like, it just, and I want to love Michelle Pfeiffer, and I do, like usually I do, but it didn't work for me in this, and it was sad.
She was super badass in this movie. I do want to give props for these certain scenes that she does where she does like rock this fucking part. Like she really does. It's literally just these moments of dialogue that are doing nobody any favors. I mean, one of the big ones that I freaking clocked was Scott has this weird moment where it's the they came moment, right? Where everybody finally shows up, and it's like it's a trope, and it's one that hits me. Like it usually affects me like really well. Like when groups of people band together against a common cause, like is a big like switch for me, right? You don't have to flag it with a line of dialogue from Scott, and the fact that it was flagged felt so cheap. Like cheap into the moment so much that I was like, you ruined it. Like that kind of stuff happens in this movie, like where you can be super in and invested in a thing because things are looking really good, and then out of left field something wild happens that like just doesn't quite fit, and it just like it hits your ear wrong, or it doesn't quite look right, and suddenly the whole thing becomes like a facade. You realize you're back in a movie theater and not invested anymore.
Yeah. I think another big thing for me with this movie, and we've already talked about how Hasbro and their marketing of toys like weirdly gets in the way of these movies for me, or just it could do it for anybody, is Cassian Lang, spoilers, just I don't want to be the asshole here, when she grows for the first time, like that was supposed to be this big significant moment in the film.
It was to me. I didn't know it was coming.
That's awesome that it was to you. She was the Build-A-Figure for the Ant-Man wave of figures that was teased like the week before the movie came out. Is that it's a giant man version of Cassie. And I'm
don't buy the coloring books, don't buy the little golden books, don't buy don't go up
like
to the
don't
Lego
look
sets,
for that
like,
stuff. It's just, but it was one of those things where I'm like, oh, that makes sense, right? Because at this point, we know that you can go big or you can go little. So like, yeah, of course. And then it happened in the movie, and I'm like, oh, that was supposed to be significant, but they cannibalized it to sell fucking toys. And that didn't feel good. Like that, like this felt like one of those situations where after everything that's happened, we need the movie to hit really well. And we need we need to prove that Marvel is still what Marvel can be. And that, I mean, look at the shelves of the stores that are still littered with Wakanda Forever figures. I picked up a Namor for $7.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, like that's something. Like the what Marvel movies were, this like money making, constantly perpetual motion device, right? They're not that right now, and it's starting to affect things. Another big effect to that was that they moved Ant-Man into February, like it was supposed to be the Marvels, and then they shifted the Marvels to the summer.
Yeah
And now the Marvels is on hiatus until November, maybe. Like it's, you can kind of tell that their house is not settled. And as much as like you just want to take the movie and enjoy the movie for what the movie is, with how, I don't know how I want to say this, how much Disney waves the flag of we have Marvel when the house is not like right side up, when you can tell that there are problems going on in the house. It's hard not to watch the thing and not consider all of that. Does that make sense? Do I like?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I definitely know that there's a level at which people are watching these movies because they're invested in the whole thing. There are some people out there that only see like certain ones because they only care about, the Guardians, or they only care about Ant-Man. Like there's all different ways that people take these movies in. As people like us that do like kind of want to know what's going on and keep our noses a little too deep in the shit when it comes to this sort of stuff. Yeah, for sure. It's hard to kind of divorce yourself from all of that. My thing is like since Endgame, right? Like since Infinity War and Endgame, like there's always I always kind of figured there was going to be this phase of them trying to figure out what the hell are we actually going to be doing, because without the larger arc, without the larger aim, there's not really a goal. And like, were they going to make individual movies? Well, no, they still want to tell an arc. Okay, but what's that arc going to be like? And it was never, and they're never going to recapture that. And I feel like they had to have known that, right? Like, so when these movies come out and they're doing kind of, they're trying things, they're not quite working. This one's a little too weird. This one has a little too much interference in the studio. This one has like, this one just seems to have completely divorced itself from everything else going on in the universe. Like, there's all of this stuff that they're just trying right now. And this movie really felt like, well, while everybody else is trying stuff, we need something that's going to at least keep kind of like anchoring. And this just felt like an anchor film where they were just dumping a bunch of stuff in to be like, this is what we're working on, and you can kind of relate it to A, B, and C. There's like vague like visual references to other things going on in the world and things like that. A lot of what's going on in Ant-Man with the quantum stuff, very eerily similar to a lot of the stuff going on with like the magic visuals of Doctor Strange, right? And I could easily see them saying like, well, what you're doing is you're manipulating the quantum state of things at that level, and basically we
And
call
that's
that
what
magic.
magic is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like there's a lot of that kind of like we're not tying it to anything specific, we're not forcing anybody into any corners, but just so that everybody's aware, this is the State of the Union for Marvel. And when has anybody ever watched a State of the Union address and walked away and went like, that made me feel good, that made me feel invigorated, that made me feel like, basically this movie was, all it had to be was reassuring. And in a lot of ways it was at least that. Like, it feels like there is at least an aim now. It feels like they are capable of just making a movie, because there is stuff in this that is just fun, like making fun of themselves. All of the stuff with
MODOK is fantastic.
was so good.
I don't know how anyone could be upset about it. The fact that that was one of the things that people had the most criticism about, and I'm like, that was beautiful. That was the thing. You want to talk about anchoring? Way to anchor yourself to the pre-Endgame MCU.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a lot of words.
No, but like, yeah, this movie has just like, here's the thing. I realized, like, did I find this movie bringing me joy in more moments than not? Yes. Did I find that I would rewatch this movie, like walking out of it? Yeah, I would definitely rewatch this movie sometime. Like, it does not offend me in some way that I couldn't stand to have. Like, yeah, sure. Like, I don't know if I'll ever actively do it. Maybe I will. I don't know. It could be one of those movies that like 3 years from now, I'm just like, man, you know what I actually really want to watch right now? I could see that being this movie.
And it happens.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like there's so the problem is that we live in a world in which every kind of thing before this has to top, like, they can never have a downslope, right? Like, God forbid they put out a good film instead of a life-changing film, right? Like, it sucks because of course it's not, it was doomed from the get-go, and it had something that it needed to prove, and it didn't prove it. And like, are we really going to hold it against this movie? Probably. Yeah, people are probably going to talk about this one being kind of one of the like nails in the coffin, maybe. Like, it's unfortunate, but I don't know if that's fair.
I will agree with everything that you've said there. I guess for me, I will rewatch this movie. And one of the reasons why I was reticent to discuss it was I want to give it that rewatch. I want it to not be... This is one that I think that my excitement for this film and like the fervor that was built up around it definitely might have had some effect on my taking it in as a film. Because going to the movies is so strange now, right? Yeah. Because it used to not be an event for me, right? Which was nice because everything kind of got taken in at the same level. But this was the first time that the whole family was going back to the movies. And we had the whole thing planned. And like, it just didn't work. One of the most recent trips to the cinema that was absolutely excellent was going to see Black Adam when you were here. And that was something that, like, I looked up the movie times, and it's like, I'm going to float this as an idea. Because I didn't know what your night was planned, right? And then you did it, and then Dale's like, well, if you're not going to be home till after midnight, I guess I'll go see the movie with you. So, like, we ended up having Dale come, and it was this whole event, and we got to see Black Adam, and, like, to top it off, Black Adam was surprisingly good.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
I here's the thing. I don't think Black Adam had as I don't think Ant-Man was any better or any worse than the experience I had with Black Adam as a movie. Like the act of going to the movie may have been different because of like we got to go see Black Adam together. And
Yeah.
I went and I saw by myself sitting in a theater. Although actually that was kind of nice that I was by myself watching this movie.
Were you
But
completely
like
alone?
so only one other group of people showed up, a kid and obviously his grandmother who had brought him. But the way that all the theaters in Utah are built, you basically might as well be alone in like a box seat. Like there's the big walls between you and the people in front of you, and it's like the automatic
Yeah.
reclining chairs and stuff like that. So like there were two other people in the theater, but they were plumb on the other side of the theater, like 4 rows down, and like I was in a seat that I was so leaned back, I was basically in my own room already. So like I might as well have been alone.
Yeah. I think, you know what I will say too, and I'm going to collect some more data. We're going to talk about that, things that I have planned for the week. But I don't like the reclining seats. I'm going to be that asshole. I think that I kind of liked the sort of uncomfortable auditorium style seats that I would go to the movie theater in. Cause like, I wasn't fighting falling asleep if I was all the way back. Does that make sense?
You know, you don't have to put the chair back,
I
right?
do.
The
No, and then
reclining
I end
seat
up
does-
putting it forward. And then, like, those chairs, unfortunately, they're not the most. You don't really have, like, back support if you're all the way forward.
Right.
So
They're meant
it's.
to be reclined.
Yeah, they're meant to be reclined. So, I mean, I'm having the same issue with my recliner at home where I'm like, sometimes I just want to sit forward and have my feet on the ground. And it's like, but then you don't have any back support because this is designed to basically envelop you like a cocoon. And it's
This
like,
week on Old Man Talk.
I'm just talking. I'm just talking about the things that don't do
affect
that.
me.
I'm
An old man.
I don't know. I mean, I'm still going to them. I'm going to John Wick. I got John Wick 4 tickets.
Nice. Well, I
Which
mean, we
is-
got to now, right? Got to go see
Yeah.
when we can, right?
I had picked them up before, right? Like, we've been dancing around it. The title's probably a reference to it. Lance Reddick passing away was a punch to the fucking gut for me.
Yeah, it sucked. It sucked big time. We've talked about a few different things
Yeah.
over the last couple of years that we've really found him to be surprisingly. I mean, like the fact that we, because he's got the role in Paradise PD
Yep.
is what I'm getting to, and then eventually Farzar, right? And we've talked about how those shows are upsettingly watchable for us, and like a big part of that, especially in Farzar, is him. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's.
man.
Oh my god, I never even considered Farzar. Here's the thing for me. I found out because of something that Wendell Pierce, who I follow on Twitter, only because of Hackers, right? I have loved Wendell Pierce in so many different projects, but the reason why I follow him on Twitter is because he is the Secret Service agent in Hackers. And I opened up Twitter and I see him talking about Lance Reddick having passed away. And I'm just like, no, that can't. What the hell is this? And then I go and I find a New York Times article, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, not that Wendell Pierce is not the type of person who would do it. It was just like disbelief that that's whose words I was
Let me
reading
put it this
about
way.
it.
Yeah, sure. And if you ever cited to be a primary source of Wendell Pierce on Twitter, I would definitely raise an eyebrow. Going and actually looking for a decent source on news is not a bad choice.
Yeah, no, and that's fair. But it was just one of those things where, like, the disbelief that you usually see when you hear that somebody passed away on Twitter, you'd
Yeah.
think that it would be, like, de-escalated, but it was wicked magnified by it being the type of voice where, like, yeah, this is the type of thing that you would see from that. Where it's just like, this is a level of disbelief that this is what I'm seeing right now. And then when I read it in the New York Times, it was a punch to the gut, but it was mostly a punch to the gut because I thought, like, of how deeply it would affect you because of all the conversations we have had about his projects over these last few years. And then,
we don't know. We don't know
Farzar,
what
baby.
happens. Yeah, I know. We don't know what's happened. So like I can only speculate on this, but like the amount of stuff that he has shown up in the last few years, it's either extremely sad because his career was just like starting to take off, or he kind of knew something was going on, right? Like you
Right.
got to start wondering about all that because he was just doing everything. I mean, like the big thing last year that I would really lost my shit about with him was Resident Evil, and
Mm-hmm.
like I will still tout like that show knows exactly what it wants to be. That show may not necessarily be the best like thing ever created, but it is so Resident Evil that Resident Evil basically is probably going to be the next like the next couple of Resident Evil games, I mean, are probably going to pull from that so that they can tell some stories. Let me just put it that way. Um, there's yeah, like the guy, I think that this is what you and I were talking about, is like it seemed like he really there was no line he was not afraid to cross, to like try stuff. Like he did not seem to ever care about like the pedigree of a project. He did not ever seem to care about like what the project kind of looked like. If he got his hands on it, he just did it. Like he brought 110% and elevated it. And then like the first thing you sent me was the Eric Andre clip. For anybody that's not seen him when he was on Eric Andre, it is hilarious. It is offensive. It is crazy. It's and the fact that this is fucking Lance Reddick
Is
doing
it
it.
more or less offensive knowing that LeVar Burton later came on that same show to say, "I wish I were Lance Reddick"?
Oh god.
I couldn't find a good quality of that one, but that
Oh
is
no.
that callback, like in the most recent season of the Eric Andre show where he was bald and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
LeVar Burton just comes out and he looks like a senator, and he's dressed in like full military regalia, and it's like one of these moments where like clearly this is for the bit, right? The way that
Yes.
the Lance Reddick whole interview goes, there's that moment where it looks like he legitimately shakes Eric Andre
Yeah,
because
yeah.
because you see him sitting there, and it's when Hannibal eats the potato chip where he like realizes, oh, I see what this is.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like I see I can play here. I can have fun here. So
Yeah.
he does something that is not scripted, because I have to imagine that his "I wish I were LeVar Burton" bit was scripted, because like that costume wouldn't just be back there.
I feel like it might have been scripted. I don't know who they told. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens with Eric Andre sometimes that like I I know he is like the writer for that show. Like, but there must be this shit that they pull on him. His reactions to stuff are so good on
Yeah.
that show that I have to imagine that there is stuff that they just throw at him sometimes and then just like keep the camera rolling. And that moment was one of those moments where I was like, I somebody wrote this, but did he know this was happening?
Yeah. Well, he certainly didn't know that Lance Reddick was going to slap the desk. He did not know that, because Eric Andre's like, oh God, we pushed him too far. Oh God, we pushed him too far. And then I think it's him like trying to get back to it. And it's just the fact that like, we want you to come out and say, I wish I was LeVar Burton. But by that point, Lance Reddick knows the game and he's part of the joke. So he's going to do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah.
And it's one of those moments where like, this is the type of Lance Reddick, not that I don't want to remember him and everything that he did, but that was one of those things where it's like, this is him live action, this is him clearly having a blast, and it's
Yeah.
just yeah.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, Destiny. I know that's the other one that everybody's already kind of throwing out there, but like his voice in my ears for two games and tons of hours, at least 200 hours of Destiny that I put in Destiny and Destiny 2, like, but Lance Reddick was one of the few things that carried over to the new to 2, right? Like he's one of the few characters that to this day was still working in there. A lot of people talking about ways that they can honor him in the game. I hope they figure something out, because man, that dude kind of made that game with all the weird shit that was going on around it. Having a constant like him was pretty rad.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean,
yeah,
like, people
yeah,
are honoring the character. I'd like that. If you log into Destiny right now, there's just characters surrounding him,
yeah,
paying their respects in that way, which is cool. That he transcended in that way. And then
yeah,
everybody talks about The Wire, but I think of Fringe, because he was so
yeah.
good as Broyles in Fringe.
Well, I think the thing is that Fringe kind of falls to the background for a lot of people, and
To
which
the
I think is
Fringe.
fair. I think Fringe, yeah, I think Fringe had some really good moments in it, but it was very derivative of like the X-Files and stuff. And at the end of the day, there isn't anybody on it that didn't have other better projects to point to.
The entire marketing of Fringe is the X-Files, but by the Lost guy. And you're like, oh, Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll watch it. And I was like, I guess I'll watch the first episode. And that first episode sold me. That first episode of Fringe totally got
Oh, we
inside
know
of my
somebody that played a
brain.
dead body in the first season.
We do. In episode 12, I can't remember who is in the
Yeah,
episode.
that's one of the big things I remember is I didn't, like I knew the show existed, knew people were watching it, like I wasn't like head in the sand. I just wasn't into it, And then I found out that somebody that we knew played a dead body in one episode, so I was like, well, I have to check that out, and that got me into Fringe. I ended up watching more of that show than not.
One of the things that I remember with Fringe, and this one sticks with me, is I would always go to the mall on the Saturdays when we were in port when I worked on the Carnival Dream.
Mm-hmm.
And the cruise director was like, you go to the movie store, right? Because you're always coming back with like DVDs. I go, yeah. He's like, can you buy me a copy of Lost Season 6? Because I know it came out and we want to watch it. I haven't seen it yet. And I'm like, I will do this for you, but you need to let me borrow the finale disc because it's the only episode I haven't seen of it. And now I came to Lost later, too. Like, I was never a Lost guy, but it was one of those situations where, like, I'm going to watch the finale episode on your box set of Lost before you, if that's okay. And he agreed and he did it. And then while I was buying it, one of the other guys that we worked with, he ended up being the rigging guy. He's like,
Okay.
I've heard about the other show they do, Fringe. I'm like, it's really, really good. He's like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, hold on. And I went and I got a copy of the season 1 of that, and I bought it for him as a gift. And he's like, you don't have to do it. I'm like, here's the thing. It's probably going to circulate around the ship, right? Nobody brings the DVDs and shit that they buy while they're on the cruise home with them because you just don't have the room for it.
Right.
Like, so it becomes sort of this inherited thing. So, Eric, if you are interested in watching Fringe, I'm going to buy you the first season of Fringe. I'm already here playing with company money, kind of, buying this Lost DVD. Like, I'll get this for you. And he was so happy. And then when he watched, he's like, man, I'm really glad that you bought it for me because I was on the fence, but I love it. And I'm like, I'm glad to hear that, Eric. Thank you very much. Like, and that will always stick with me, that, like, because it was one of those shows where it was hard to get people on board. But as soon as you watched an episode, you realized it's not Lost, which, again, like, that was the big selling point. It was like, it's sci-fi Lost. And it's like, well, that's weird because Lost is kind of sci-fi, isn't it? What is happening?
Actually, turned out to be more fantasy than sci-fi, but we're not going to.
It was just Dungeons and Dragons. It was a church group playing Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, I'm no spoiler tag on what Lost is.
Some say they're playing that game to this very day.
Yes, forever and ever. Think about it. 4, 4-sided die. 8, 8-sided die. 16, 16-sided die.
Hey. Oh my God. No.
I'm sorry. Oh, that was too fun. I enjoyed that a little bit too much. I apologize to Sejohn and the listeners.
So what else have you been up to, man?
Oh, no. I just want to say, I want to say one other thing about Lance Reddick, though, and that is the fact that I got the ticket for John Wick 4. I had it beforehand, and my whole plan was to watch all the John Wick movies, which they're on Peacock if you're looking in through the streaming retail, and you're like, where are they? They wound up on Peacock, which is not surprising, but that's where they are. So now might be the time to try Peacock. I don't know. I like Peacock, but I'm the only one, I think, in the world who watches it. I got to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I don't know anyone else. You say this all the time, and I keep looking out, but I can't find anyone.
Yeah, no, if you use Peacock, I'm going to do it in the middle. Get to me at Devon D. Decker on Twitter. I need to know that I'm not alone because I'm developing an attachment to Peacock that is borderline unhealthy, and if no one else is using it, they'll take it away from me. But it is also
you could consider it all your own. Maybe they'll just keep pumping it out for Devon.
Great. I don't know. Puss in Boots went up on the 10th of March. So like if you're the new one, yeah. The Last Wish. So if you're looking for an excuse to try Peacock without the ads, it's $10 and you can watch Tar, you could watch Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, you could watch all 3 John Wick's movies. John Wick's.
Basically, any movie that Martin Scorsese says saves cinema, you can find it there.
It seems that way. Megan, both regular and unrated, which, like, I think that's cool that they're like, we're going to put them both up. It's just, I really like Peacock, and this is not an ad. This is just my experiences with it, and also a bit of a plea because I feel like no one else is using it. And now Magnum PI is on there, and oh my God, the 5th season of Magnum PI is blowing me away. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Okay.
But yeah.
Hashtag not an ad.
Hashtag not an ad. Hashtag just an insane person who loves an app that like only works on my Apple TV now. It hasn't worked. It stopped working on my Fire Stick, so that's why we got the Xbox. And now the Xbox is like, oh, we can't connect to this app. I'm like, no, Peacock, please don't forsake me. But yeah, so I'm going to rewatch all the John Wicks to be ready for it. But like, now that's 4 movies that are weirdly tinged with sadness in a way that
I mean, I think he would, I would see them as joy because like this is the kind of stuff that he just loved doing, you know?
True.
Like I said, didn't ever turn a roll down. And because of that, ended up in these phenomenal ones. Cause like, if he stuck to his guns and only took like some like bigger leading roles, like especially after something like Fringe where he was pretty huge on that show, like I don't know if he ever would have gotten the part of the hotel guy in in John Wick, right? That then blows up into 4 movies, but like in that first movie, not a huge role for him to suddenly be in.
Hello, Mr. Wick.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So that's the other sad thing is that I'm never going to be randomly watching something and just hear that voice.
You hear that voice
like
again. Yeah, I know.
When his last thing in the can is finally released, that's gonna be the day that it really hits me, because I know that there's John Wick 4 and that he's in it because he's been in the marketing for it.
Yeah.
So like I know I'll get to see that, but like what other little trinkets and treasures will be unearthed as we go through? I don't know. I wish I was LeVar Burton.
Oh God, no! We're not doing this.
As I said at one time. So I don't know. So yeah, right now we're at a choose your own adventure moment in this episode of the Say Report. I could tell you what I've been doing, or we could dive a little bit deeper into the sadness hole.
Oh, let's not go in the sadness hole. We're not doing that. That's not.
No, I think we go deeper into sadness hole. I mean, like, because then we end in the sadness hole. You don't want to end in the sadness hole.
Oh, you're saying that no matter what, we're gonna go down both.
No matter what, we're going down both of these paths.
Fine, let's hear it. Come on.
Shah-zam, Fury of the Gourds. Shah-zam, Furry of the Gourds.
Oh, right.
Yeah, right?
Came out.
That movie that you keep forgetting about. That movie that I talked about Black Adam to maybe use as a segue point. And then I'm like, Sejohn forgot the movie existed again, didn't he?
Yeah, I completely forgot. Yeah, you said before we started, you were like, "Oh yeah, we could also talk about Shazam," and I was like, "What about Shazam?" Oh right, there's one of those out.
Right, there's a new movie out, isn't there? I guess maybe. I haven't seen it, and I got to tell you, like,
why would we talk about it?
Because we need to talk about something that is interesting to me about this film. Okay. And that's the other thing, right? Like, that's why we're not going much deeper in the sadness hole. It's just that while we're down here, we're picking up some mud and we're playing with it, right? And clearly the passing of Lance Reddick has more emotional weight for Sejohn and I than the Furry of the Gourds. I'm just going to be honest with that.
Shazam's Furry Gourds.
Shah-zam. It's Shah-zam. If you say it the other way, he'll turn back into Billy Batson.
Mash?
I don't know what's happening. We've lost English, ladies and gentlemen. Wait.
I'm trying really hard to not talk about Shazam, I guess. But I mean...
Well, the thing that I need to talk about, and the reason why I haven't seen it, and I have to tell you, I don't know if you could pay me to see it. Like, that's where I'm at with this movie. It's unless something crazy happens about this movie, I have seen the end credit scene, which like is not something I look for, but it just showed up on my Twitter and I'm like, you know what? I don't care. So I watched that, and I watched that more because it featured characters from Peacemaker. And I'm like, well, I like that. I like Peacemaker. So I'm going to watch this scene that features them, because I don't know when I'm ever going to see this movie.
So here's the thing. We talked a lot with Black Adam about how it really didn't tie itself to too much stuff already currently going on, blah, 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 except for some of the Peacemaker stuff and all that. We didn't really mention the fact that Jimon Hansu is in it, right, in Black Adam. which does tie it pretty firmly to the Shazam movies in that regard. And so like it's just weird because they've already kind of announced that they're not continuing with Black Adam, right? Like they've all but basically said that
They
there's
basically
no
said they're
future
not
plans.
continuing with the DCEU as we know
So
it.
then why do we care about this movie? Like it's
Why do I
just
care
such
about
a
Flash? Why do I care about Aquaman 2? Like these are movies that are made
Aquaman
too.
2. Yes. Why did I think there already was an Aquaman 2? No, you're right. Aquaman 2. Yes. Sorry. I was like, is there already one?
No,
I think I'm thinking of the previews for Fast X.
understandable. Let's be honest. Fasten your seatbelts, kids. Jason
Um,
Momoa is the bad guy.
yeah, but it's okay because eventually he'll become a good guy because that's what always happens.
No, he'll be bad forever. Like Cypher. That's the new change, is that now we're introducing people who can't be redeemed. Idris Elba, bad guy forever.
Nice. Yeah, I basically I don't know what kind of with the Flash there is this promise of the reset of the universe that I think a lot of people are holding on to hope that what that does is kind of links becomes a carryover to new stuff. I think people are looking at the Flash hoping that this whole we're not doing the DCEU thing is like a half lie, right? I think they're hoping that the Flash kind of does some stuff that introduces the idea of a multiverse, which means that they can still talk about these movies all being somewhat related, right? I there's that. As far as Aquaman 2 goes, I honestly thought that was one of the ones that had been canceled. Is that still happening?
By all accounts, it's still happening.
Okay.
Every time I
guess
see
that's
something
one
about
of
it,
those
I'm like,
ones that,
no. What?
well,
No.
I guess it's one of those ones that's actually already pretty much filmed, right? Because the only reason I think that is because of all the stuff that happened, oh God, like a year ago at this point or maybe only like 6 months ago with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. There was a lot of conversation about how she was already done filming Aquaman 2, was clearly going to be out and in that movie. And a lot of people who took umbrage with some of the stuff that happened in the Johnny Depp trial, like was then aiming at Aquaman and WB and wondering how much they were going to back basically having Amber Heard in what was at the time looking like one of their big movies. But I will admit that since then, now I don't know how many people seem to care whether or not she's going to be in Aquaman 2 or not. So I got the impression that like almost a year ago at this point that this movie was pretty much good to go, and I honestly thought it had already come out. That's why I was confused that you were saying 2 and not 3.
Right. So it was August of last year. We did it came up sort of as information we had gotten right before the show, so we weren't 100% on it. Excuse me. It was when Warner Brothers went on record as saying we can only release 2 more movies this year. That's how much money we have. We don't have the budget to support the release of all of the movies that we have done that could be released right now.
So
And
implying in that Aquaman was one of those movies that was done, but just not getting released, right?
Because what they said was it was the Florence Pugh movie with the spitting in real life. I still don't know the name of it. Don't leave me.
Good girls don't die. I don't
know. Look up the name of it while I
I'm
tell
going
this
to.
little
You
story,
keep going.
please. Yeah. So that was one of them, and the other one was Black Adam. Those were the 2 that they decided to release last year.
Don't worry, darling.
Don't worry, darling. Thank you. I will. It's such a weirdly generic title that it does not stick in my
I'll see
brain.
Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. She's apparently in that, and I bet that's a much better film.
Watch Black Widow, where she is fantastic as Yelena Belova. Like, it is, woof. I'm excited. But yeah, so those are the movies that they say they're going to release. These are the Warner Brother movies for the rest of the year. And we commented, oh, that's one in September, that's one in October. And then I guess, like, they're not doing anything for Oscar season? Like, that's crazy. But that's what they did. And then the movies they talked about having done that were not going to be released were Aquaman 2 and Flashpoint. They never even talked about Shah-zam, Furry of the Gourds. Probably because that's not how you would say the name. But, like, those were the 2 movies that were being talked about. So then, when we saw Black Adam and there was a trailer for Shah-zam 2, I'm like, they're doing that? Like, that wasn't part of their thing. But that's because it wasn't done at the time that press release went out.
Yeah.
So then, they still shuttering Aquaman 2. I think there was a screening a couple of months ago and people fucking hated it. So I don't know what's going to happen of it, but by all accounts, it is done. You have this one, and then you have Flashpoint coming out, and then like that's gonna be the end of everything. So this movie comes out, and the reason why we're talking about it, again, I haven't seen it, couldn't pay me to see it, don't know if I'll ever watch it. I mean, if it's free at home and I have literally nothing else to do, maybe. But like, I hated the first movie, for one. That first movie did not work for me. And then for two, like, I'm not interested. I'm just not interested in this world anymore, right? Yeah. I've seen the part that links into Peacekeeper, but here's why we're talking about it. We're talking about it because it only did $3.6 million in its Thursday pre-showings, which started at 3 p.m. So 3, possibly 4 screenings minimum.
Yeah.
On Thursday night. And the gross was at 3.6 million. And that
you could probably fit 4 screenings in if there was a showing that started after midnight. That doesn't really happen much anymore since like the Harry Potter movies, but if you had a screening that started after midnight, you could probably fit in 4 showings on a screen that started at 10.
Or if you had nothing playing, it could be one of those ones where they do a 3, a 3:30, a 5, a 5:30.
Yeah, if you wanted to dedicate more than one screen, right?
If that. But like on a single screen, you could maybe get 3 screenings, possibly a 4th. That's just how it is. So 3.6 million, DC was so upset by this number that they moved forward what we see as the marketing for your superhero movie. Because do you know who I saw in a trailer on Saturday? Do you, Sejohn?
For Shazam?
For Shah-zam, Furry of the Gourds.
I mean, if you say Henry Cavill, I'll shit my pants.
Gal Gadot.
Oh. Well, that's a whole other... Wow, okay.
Yeah. In the trailer. The thing that is usually kept for the 2 weeks, right? We'll do the 2 weeks, the movie, the first week, hopefully the buzz for the film drives people out. The second week, hopefully how much fucking money and the FOMO drives people there. And then by the third week, now we're showing the cameos and stuff that, like, if you don't see the movie, you're not going to see Wonder Woman's in the movie. They moved that up to Saturday. It was a 9 a.m. commercial for Shazam 2. And there was Wonder Woman front and center.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm just like, wow.
Who is this movie for?
Well,
I think that's one of my biggest questions about this is like the way that this movie has kind of not been able to figure out who its audience is from the get-go has been kind of amazing. Like, on the one hand, the whole point of Billy is that he's a kid that can turn into a Superman type figure. So like there's this draw of like marketing this kind of character to young children because of that, sure. But you don't have to do that. The other option is that you are marketing it towards the opposite direction, the older crowd, and this idea being that, like, how's he going to deal with being this, like, this older, you know, figure, but also still having to be a kid sometimes. That's more meaningful to adults, right? Like, oh, he actually has life problems he has to deal with, not just, like, his friends fart too much. You know, like, and it doesn't want to, it wants to be both of those kinds of movies. Right. And the problem is that, as we saw in the first one, it ends up with this disjointed mess of a film. And then when it comes to marketing the second one, all I see is them falling into those same traps again. Half of the jokes in the trailer are all of this like really dumb, like prop comedy-esque almost style jokes, which it would work if that's what they want to lean into, is like the comic booky, like cartoony nature of a character like this. I mean, the dude that drew Bone famously drew this guy. Jeff Smith drew this guy for years. Like, you want to talk about like some phenomenal, great like pull from source material. There's some really fun cartoony stuff you can do with this character, but they don't want to do that because then they're going to lose their older audiences. But they don't want to do anything too serious with the older audiences, so you end up with like the Power Rangers team of his siblings, which I know is something that is from the comics, but like the way that it's presented on screen, it looks like a fucking joke.
The fact that it happened in the first movie, like if Mary had become Marvel Girl, I would have understood that. I don't even know what is she just Mary Batson? Like Mrs. Shazam. Like, I don't know what her name is when they can't use the Marvel of it all. I don't know what her legally safe name is I guess what I'll say.
Smashly.
But like if Mary had become one, I understand that because that's a pretty iconic character, right? But
Right.
all of his like foster siblings, yeah, and I guess Freddy becoming one because then you see it for Freddy. But then for everyone in that first movie, like, oh, there's 7 deadly sins and there's 7 of us. Let's all become a superhero and fight crime and fight these things. Like that's where for me, like it dilutes the specialness of being Shazam for Billy Batson, and which is really weird. And I'm fine. I know what happens in the comics, but like save that for the sequel, maybe. Don't just put it all out there in the first movie.
Or earn it. Like
that's or earn it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Like that movie doesn't do anything to earn that moment. It just happens because like it would be a cool thing to see. And that feels like more of what we're seeing in this next in with all the previews that I had been seeing about it. Like at some point I stopped even seeing those though. Like it just felt like they didn't know what to do with this movie. They don't know what to do with this movie. And by all accounts, this movie doesn't know what to do with itself. So I don't know. I don't really want to.
Yeah. No, I don't want to need to do anything else. It's just that what I wanted to talk about was that fast forwarding of the classic superhero marketing.
I mean, like DC is so like, so the big thing that they're like talking about right now is, I guess, the Superman movie that James Gunn is now going to be writing and directing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I just can't believe with all of the stuff about him taking over and now him being in charge of an actual Superman movie that like nobody has been talking about Brightburn at all in any of this stuff, which I think is really wild.
More people are upset that he puts his wife into every movie, which that was a good tweet where he's like, yeah, I put her in one movie. Everything else comes from that. She didn't show up in Black Adam because of me. She played a character that they wanted to put in Black Adam. Like I don't know what to tell you. And then I did want to be like, I mean, you put her in Peacemaker though, right? Like you were the one in charge of that. It's not like you wrote that and someone else directed it, James.
Yeah, but I mean, to his point, he created a role that she played, and people like that character enough that she shows up in other places. She's able to do with it.
Yeah,
it's weird because like, I mean, that's such a weird like thing to levy against somebody who at the time that those movies were being made had no control over this stuff. It shows such a lack of understanding about how the world works that just like it becomes just a really childish.
Oh yeah, it was. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I guess he did Peacemaker, but that's not a movie. I guess he's technically correct, but like, yeah, but then also seeing her in Peacemaker and everything she did there, yeah, that's a character that I'd want to have in my DC movie, right? Yeah. I'd rather have her than Amanda Waller again, and I love Amanda Waller. She's just so rough edges in the freaking DCEU.
I don't know how they're going to use her going forward. If they're eliminating the DCU, like I don't know. It's such a wild thing. But yeah, everybody is so focused on what he's done and like with other DC specific movies and all of this stuff that like we all forget that he straight up like produced. Technically, he didn't like write or direct that one. I think, right? I think he just produced it. I think his like brother or somebody wrote it.
I mean, Brightburn is something that I've never watched. I'll be honest about that.
But I mean, like he's connected to the what if Superbad bad story that we all kind of hated on Snyder for doing. And this is not me judging any creative or anything like that. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be where he is or anything. I am just astounded at the blind spot people are willing to grow for certain people is all.
That's fair. It's an interesting thing to take note of.
Yeah,
because it is a blind spot. It is a blind spot to not talk about it. It's a blind spot. Like he did Super, right? He also did that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes,
right?
he did. Yeah, so, another one that I don't ever hear anybody talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he did Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's kind of what he became known for. He also did Lollipop Chainsaw, which is supposedly getting a remaster this year. This is why I'm going to sneak that.
That's
in.
Ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, like we really want to get into it. Like I will always and forever love Gunn for his Scooby Doo, right? Like I mean, like they're like the guy. I love the work that Gunn does. This is what I mean is I don't want to like shit all over. Like I love that we have a guy who's stepping in at DC. I think it's the thing that they've been missing. It does, you know, there are risks, there are dangers. I don't think that Gunn is a perfect filmmaker by any stretch of the imagination. So like there's going to be rough things that need to get sorted out and worked on, and maybe Gunn won't always be the one at the head of it. But like they needed something, right? They needed somebody that they could hang their fucking.
It's something that they needed, but it's a position I don't think anybody would be willing to jump into. Like you get offered, you want to be the Kevin Feige of the DC? No, thank you. I appreciate the offer. Like he needed to get it to the point where he could negotiate and say, "I want the control." right?
Yeah.
And you don't get an Authority movie if you don't have him saying, I want the control.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm excited to see what it is. I mean, that announcement stream blew me away. Like, these are the things that we're going to get to see from DC? Okay, sign me up.
Yeah, all the more reason they're going back to the Shazam stuff. Like, why? Like, this movie was just dead in the water, and like, I feel bad because, like, you know, it is a movie that gets made, and I think we talked about this last, you know,
it's very difficult for a movie to even get made.
Like, yeah. Right. Like, the fact that there's a movie in front of your eyeballs should be like celebrated. We forget that sometimes, and like, I. This is definitely a movie people worked on, so like I don't want to be like,
and I don't want to. I don't want to take any. I'm not trying to say anything about. I didn't like the first one. That's just a fact. And this one, because I didn't like I'm not interested in seeing it. But I'm blown away by the fact that DC's already like, we need to panic switch mode. Into disaster mode.
Yeah, like, they're already in panic mode. It's crazy.
And it's like. And then the thing from the director saying, like, I mean, I saw where this was going a while. It was why I got paid up front. Like, it's like, oh, wow, that's it's just, I don't know how it happened. I wish it were something that came and was as surprising as Black Adam was, right? And we're not seeing any of that yet.
No.
And honestly, if we do see something like that, that's the type of thing that could get me to go out to the theater to see this sequel, because Black Adam blew me away in so many ways that I was just like not prepared for.
All right, Devin, get me out of this sad hole.
All right, we're climbing up. So Metroid Prime Remastered, right?
All right.
Little bit of a spoiler for Devon Decker. I said I played it, but I hadn't gotten through the tutorial yet. And I thought, this being St. Patrick's Day weekend, this is a good time to do it. I can't play that game a little bit drunk. I'm going to be honest with you. I may have unlocked my problem with first person shooters in the fact of that, like, I'm too immersed, man. I was trying to run away from the space pirate ship as it was blowing up, and I'm just like, I'm breathing heavy, and I'm freaking out, like, oh my god, if I don't make it, I'm gonna die. Like, what's gonna happen? And then I failed, and like, it was scary. I'm like, oh no, what do I do?
So is this just a story about how you pissed yourself, or like what?
I didn't pee myself. I'm proud of myself for not peeing myself, but now I've gotten to the game proper. And as much as I wanted to start playing the game proper, I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because I was reminded that I own Mighty Gunvolt Burst on the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
And I never beat that game. I never finished that game. So I'm like, I'm gonna beat this game. I'm gonna finish this game. So that's what I've been doing.
So this isn't about Metroid Prime. Okay.
It's not about Metroid Prime. I'm sorry. I bait and switched you. There'll be more. I don't even know if I'm going to get to. I don't know what I'm going to do. Resident Evil 4 comes out on Friday, and I'm like, am I going to play it? Am I going to buy it on release day? I got the day off, right? I got the day off to get an oil change, Resident Evil 4, and John Wick 4. It's my 4x4 weekend, right? That's what we're calling it. That's what I'm calling it. There's no we. And I'm excited to like do it, but I would want to finish Metroid Prime beforehand, and I think I could do that. Like, when we don't have a midweek recording this week or anything like that, so I have the time. I just need to actually do it. And after freaking hyperventilating trying to escape from the space pirate ship,
yeah,
and I couldn't find a door in one room, so like I wasted time there, and I'm like, there's no way I'm getting through, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna power through. And then I blew up on the elevator as I was leaving, and I'm like, that was hard. That took a lot from me. And then this morning, while I was feeling better, I did it and I felt good, but I'm like, but I want to finish this other game that like I've owned and I never finished. And you want to know why I never finished it? There's two reasons. There's the superficial reason, and then there's the Devon Decker reason, which amazingly are not the same thing on this one.
Okay, what are the reasons that you didn't?
So the superfluous reason is, for a Nintendo Switch game, it doesn't allow you to capture video. And that upset me on like a for real level.
I'm sorry, what? What do you mean capture video?
So you know how like you can do like this, you can take a screenshot, and if you hold that button, you can like take a 30-second video clip.
Yeah, I guess I kind of knew that. I don't
Okay.
ever do that.
Oh, I use that all the time. I have so many Nintendo Switch videos saved across various
What a
thumb
waste
drives.
of memory. What a waste of memory.
And then you jump
For
it
what?
off.
Are
And
you
then
like
you
sitting
dump
around
it off.
study? Are you
I
sitting around
watch them.
studying them at
Oh,
night?
it's how
You
I
sit around
remember
like
things. It's how I remember the good times.
laces up.
Laces out. Laces out. Laces up. There's nothing. Um,
Not
uh,
nothing.
it's something. But yes. No, I like to watch them. I like to go through them. I do kind of study the game tape. They bring me back to happy moments, and they're 30 seconds long, and you can offload them to anything else. It's not like weird proprietary stuff that can only be watched on your Nintendo Switch. So I do that. So I was upset that I couldn't take videos after I got a particularly spicy kill on one of the bosses. So I'm like, well, I'm stopping. I'm stopping until they add that functionality. And they haven't added that functionality. There is an update, but I wanted to finish the game before I updated it. So we'll see what happens.
So there might actually be a thing that fixed the thing that you didn't like, which is why you didn't play this. But because you want to finish it, this is like your personal hell, isn't it?
Yep.
You can't quite finish the game without this feature, but this feature is only available if you update. But you don't want to update until you fix this
Yep.
feature.
Welcome to the Sisyphean feats of Devon Decker and the Nintendo Switch.
Punishments.
Yeah. No, Sisyphus is a punishment. He pushes that boulder and then it rolls back down.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I wouldn't call them feats.
Yeah. Okay. But then you have the other side of the coin, and on the other side of the coin, Sejohn, is the fact that the game fucking dared me to play it as hard as possible, and that bothers me. Because for anyone who doesn't know what Mighty Gunvolt Burst is, it is Beck from Mighty Number 9 and Gunvolt. I don't know if he has, I think his name is just Gunvolt, right?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything more than that.
Because he's referred to as GV in all of the little cutscenes in the game. It's a 8-bit style game where they're in virtual reality, and virtual reality has been hijacked. They're in there for training, and it's this whole like kind of cool story.
Right.
And as much as Mighty Number 9 kind of sucked, like it understood how to be a solid Mega Man game. So you take out all the Mighty Number 9 stuff and just give people a Mega Man game. Is pretty enjoyable. And the big thing about this game is that you can have up to 30 customized shots that you can cycle through using your L and R buttons. And that's all sorts of cool stuff. Like you can have homing shots or reflect shots or a spread shot thing. The only thing is that you need to have enough combat points in order to, properly put together the weapon. And you earn those by beating levels and finding them and such. It's a pretty cool little cycle. But there are challenges, and I thank God that it's on my Nintendo Switch, because if there was a platinum, I don't know if I'd be here right now, Sejohn. But there are challenges, and one of the challenges is to beat the game using only your normal shot. And that's all, 12 levels with just the normal shot. Now, here's a fun story about Mighty Number 9 and Devon Decker. I'm pretty sure I told it on the show. If not, it's not surprising.
Yeah, we're not huge fans.
Yeah,
But,
not a big fan. But because the way I found some enjoyment was playing the game with only the regular shot. And it made the last boss kind of difficult, but I learned the pattern. So as bad as the game was, and it was not a great game, right? It became a satisfying experience because I gave myself the challenge of beating it with just Beck's normal shot and was able to achieve that. So I see this challenge and I'm like, oh, well, I did that on Mighty Number 9. I'll do it on Mighty Gunvolt Burst. But what it says after finish the game with just your normal shot is open parentheses, recommended to do this with Gunvolt as he has additional skills. Close parentheses. And I'm like, well, fuck that noise. I'm going to do it as Beck. And today, 6, 7, 100 years after the game released, I finally did it as Beck. And it's because I stopped playing because I couldn't take videos. And then I'm like, well, I'm still going to do it as Beck. And I did it as Beck. And it feels pretty good to have finished the game.
I think the greatest boss you defeated was your own self.
Yes. So now that that's done, but I keep finding myself going back to it because now that I can use the weapons, the game's so much cooler.
Yeah.
Like,
so how do you feel about like other games that like give you shit about like difficulty levels and stuff? Like,
usually
it,
it doesn't bother me. Usually it doesn't bother me, but I don't like when a game gives a challenge and then in the challenge is like, this is going to be basically impossible as this guy. Because then it's like, well, then I'm going to do it as that guy. Like, that's a challenge that you have, like, cast down for me.
Okay.
And
I
will
even challenge you. They were just trying to nicely inform you, like, hey, by the way, you might not want to play this character or else you pull your hair out. You're just like,
no, I want to pull my hair out. What do you do? No, I know, and I know it's me. I know that.
Are you a masochist?
Me? No, not really. I don't really feel pain. Is one of those things that I say. Like, I used to like move.
Okay, I'm sorry I asked. I don't really feel pain.
I don't know. Maybe I am. No. I don't know. I remember when I broke my thumb playing hockey, and I just shoved it in an ice bag, and then went out there and we won the championship because it was the championship game. And now my thumb makes a little clicky noise.
This story is not like one that makes you look good, Devon.
I understand that. I get it. I'm not trying
or
to.
Anyone involved in this story, like say the adults around you at the time.
I iced it and I went out there, and then they're like, maybe it's broken, maybe it's not.
These days are just too soft.
No, that didn't happen. Thank God. I mean, my hockey stories are nuts. The time that like I got checked into the board so hard that my helmet flew off and I just kept going, even though the rule was go retrieve your helmet. But like it was a playoff game. Like I didn't have time to go retrieve my helmet. I needed to make sure that we cleared the puck from our zone. So then I did that, and then whistle and there was going to be a face off, and then like I lined up and then the ref was like, you need to go get your helmet, and I'm like, oh god, I didn't even realize I didn't have it on. So like that was cool that the ref did not throw me out of the game, which is what he should have done.
Yeah, again, that not cool, but actually not him doing his due diligence to keep you safe.
I don't know, man. Hockey was always a strange one for me. I had a good time doing it. And now I record podcasts. And I think I have all my mental faculties. I will say this. I will say this. In all of the years that I played hockey, and I played hockey since I was 3 years old. That was the first time I ever set foot on a rink. I never got a concussion. So take that for what it is. And I was an aggressive player. I gave more concussions than I got. Which is easy if you never got a concussion, right? You just gotta give one, and you can say that. But like, it sounds kind of like scary.
Oh my god! What are we doing to our children?
I don't know. What are we doing to our children, man? How do you feel about the March Madness stuff creeping up, and now suddenly it's everywhere, as it happens every year? But like.
I mean, the big thing for me with March Madness is inevitably the discussion comes up with somebody about, hey, are you going to do a bracket? And I'm just like, do you know who I am? No, I'm not going to do a bracket.
I used to do brackets when like it was an office thing, like, throw in $5 and do a bracket.
It's always an office thing. And what it was this year was a friend of the family. Their office is putting one together, but the office needs to kind of round some stuff out in the brackets, so they need some extra players. And I guess they've incentivized them, like if your partner jumps on or if your kid jumps on, like you can share in the winnings or whatever. So these people were just like, you want to get in on our office bracket? And I'm just like no, like I don't have the. Here's the thing, I will get super interested in this thing for like 3 weeks. I'm not saying that it's not cool and that I couldn't get into it. Is that I know how I work. I'm going to get super interested in this thing for 3 weeks. Something's going to come up and I'm going to forget week 4. Then week 5, I'm going to be like, oh shit, I didn't do week 4. And then I'm going to realize how I've screwed everything up, and it's going to paralyze me, and I won't be able to do anything for week 5. And then by that point, I will be like, well, I haven't done the last 2 weeks, so I guess I'm not doing this anymore, and I'll move on to something else.
So I need to tell you that brackets, that's not how brackets work. That's how, like, this is not fantasy football is not that at all. You literally put together your bracket before the first tip-off, and then it is locked in. And the only thing that you need to do is see if you were right in determining which teams would win.
I don't like. This is what I mean. Is like this is so not my bag. Like,
It's no, I
I
understand
don't
that
even
it's
know
not
how
your
it
bag.
works.
I'm sure
No,
you don't
I
know
don't even
anything
understand
about
how it
these
works.
collegiate teams at all, right? For me, I'm usually just going off of names. Like, oh, I like Gonzaga. That's a fun name.
Well, I
They're
think a
gonna win.
Timberwolf can eat a falcon, so I think I'd choose the Timberwolf.
I mean, like, what? 80% of brackets have been blown up so far this year because the
Oh, really?
16 seed beat a number 1 seed. So, like, it's huge news. It wasn't one of the play-in teams. If it weren't, because now there's 68 teams, and
Yeah.
they play in for like the 16 seed slot, which is crazy. You need to beat somebody else to prove that you're the worst person in your region. Come on, come on down. But that's not. I guess it's not that because there wasn't a play-in team that did it. So I don't know how like where they get seeded. The
I
play-in
don't know how any of
teams.
it works. It's okay.
Yeah,
You
that's
can tell
fine.
me
That's
right
okay.
now that they just hug each other at some point and just decide the season's over, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's nice."
That's nice. They'll hug, huh? The crazy thing about me about college basketball is that it's 2 halves. So the game's a hyper fast.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
4 quarters, it is 2 halves. And it's like 15-minute halves. Like it's like, oh, okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is I got dragged to all this sort of stuff all the time when I was a kid. I say dragged, but like I wanted to go. My friends were going. I just didn't care about the game. I cared about hanging out with my friends. So like hanging out, watching PC basketball and shit was always fun. But like I couldn't tell you anything that would have been happening on the court in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to a basketball game is fun, but it's the worst way to watch basketball. I
Like
will
honestly,
say
like
that.
I would
Like,
much rather go and play a pickup game somewhere than I would ever sit at like a professional basketball event. Like it's not even that I don't get basketball. I love basketball, but I love basketball when I'm like hanging out with my friends like in a park playing like, fucking horse or some shit. Like or playing a full court game like or that kind of stuff. I just I have no desire to like get into the politics and the craziness of college basketball because like I tangentially am for like football just because in the United States how like it's kind of hard to avoid that shit. And like by that very nature, I've picked up on a lot of the bad shit that goes on there. God forbid it get applied to basketball, which is just, as far as I can tell, 100 times worse when it comes to things like the worship, celebrity worship bullshit that goes on in basketball and stuff.
yeah. They're children. They're children and my dad will always say, well, they're getting an education, but it's like, yeah, but this
Oh,
is
you
a
mean the
lot.
college basketball players?
Yeah, I'm
that
talking college basketball.
kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
like they're
Not,
kids. It's
not
like
just like pay attention, like wagging your finger at the entirety of the NBA, being like, "You're all a bunch of children." All right, come
no,
down.
no, no. I mean, like the collegiate players, and my father again. His argument is that they're getting an education. I'm like, they are getting an education, right? But there are other people who are getting scholarships to that school who are getting an education who are not putting the physical toll on their bodies that these kids are doing, right?
Yeah.
It's like I think 30 games is the norm for a collegiate basketball season. And that's before you look at what amounts to 5 rounds of intense basketball over 3 weeks.
The only people that are even coming close are maybe like the ROTC guys, and when you're equating your basketball team to the military, there's a problem.
Yeah, like I mean, like collegiate athletes, and it's great that they get to go to school because they're really good at the sport. I do support that, but then what they do is just, I don't know. And then I always think about the episode of freaking King of the Hill with David Kalaliki Ali, voiced by Brendan Fraser, where they're just pushing him through so that he can get a scholarship, and like. That's
And
exciting.
Peg doesn't want to, right? Isn't that the one where like Peggy is
Peggy
grading
fails
his
him.
papers?
Peggy fails him, and then Hank gives him an internship at Strickland Propane, and he's like, "I passed him, but I shouldn't have." Right? Like I was in fear while he was there, but I had to pass him, and she's like, "You didn't have to pass him. You failed him as a teacher." And then the whole thing, like what he realizes that everybody thinks he's dumb, and that because he hasn't ever put in effort. And it's like, so he wants a scholarship to go to like a college. Is he going to be equipped to go to college and learn? And then like, we know how colleges treat athletes. Like, is it going to be just the same cycle moving on for this guy until he's eventually dumped out because of an injury, or he's done his 4 years? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that's the fear. Like,
yeah.
supposedly there's mechanisms in place to not let that happen. And as somebody that taught at the college level, like, I can tell you that there definitely are mechanisms there to make sure that that stuff's not happening. And I never really witnessed it, but, like, to say it never happens would be, like, pulling the wool over my own
Well,
eyes,
I mean,
right?
especially in that sort of episode, right? Because it's season 5.
Well, not just in the
So-
episode, just you're in life. You're
Yeah.
asking about, like, this is the kind of shit that we worry about happening with these athletes in real life. Is like, are we at some point putting them in a position? And this is like, football is the same way, especially like high school football in the South in this country and stuff like that. Like, there are areas of this country where hockey is really kind of held up in really unhealthy ways. But like, yeah, the thing is like, you can say, well, at least they're getting an education and all of that, but like, with the idea that like that these people pay their price in blood is kind of barbaric, right? Like,
Yeah.
It's unsettling. And the thing is like, we're also learning more and more about how even professional sports have maybe not been the best idea to be putting people through for decades of their life. And like, maybe if we're saying that maybe that sports is not a reasonable thing to expect of a person to do, like, it, like, the more and more that we learn about what people are doing to their bodies in these situations, the more horrifying it becomes that we've just kind of like made an entire industry out of it.
We made a circus, right? Because it's the circus to our bread.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then you think about something like the NCAA March Madness thing is a $1 billion like thing, and the kids don't see any of that money. That all goes to the colleges. Like,
right. Like, I mean, the easiest example of that always goes back to stuff like the video game stuff, right? Like, that's the kind of thing, is that the conference signs all of those contracts and puts all those deals together, and then the conference gets all of those monies, but the kids never get that money from them,
right.
because they're it's
but they're getting that education, and like, yes, the price of an education in America is very expensive. It's sort of the only thing that we produce as a country is education, right? But I don't know if is it right that you're making billions of dollars off the back of this guy, and in turn giving him like a $35,000 education? Like,
yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, I think this is definitely a problem in college sports. I think what you're talking about is a kind of a larger issue in general, is that like, we are just paying people millions of dollars to just destroy themselves in front of us, and and the fact of the matter is we all
I'm not prepared to have the conversation. It's just something that I guess it's called March Madness, but it's weird that it starts in the middle of the month. And like, last year it didn't end until April.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, this one should be in all of... No, it won't. Finale games will be played in April again because of when they started. Because it's 3 weekends worth of games. Jesus. I'm sorry. I just get all this information. It's all that's been on in the house, which is fine, right? I got my Pizza Hut NCAA basketball.
Nice.
Makes me happy, right? Little collector's item. I love a mini basketball. I'm just going to say it. Like, that's what I've been doing. I've been watching Magnum. Finally did the 4-episode test. Magnum is back and alive at NBC after leaving CBS. It feels like it's a little cheaper made, and you could tell that it's on NBC instead of CBS because there's an overarching plot line, as opposed to Magnum, which would just be like, yeah, you're solving a mystery this week. That's what Magnum PI does.
Because we don't know if this particular audience is going to make it till next week. We cannot have it to be continued.
It's not just, I mean, there's that, but it's the fact that we want people to be able to put this on and it not matter that it's season 1 or season 4, right?
Right.
I'm realizing
we can put the marathon on. We can throw it into syndication, and there will be no need to watch certain ones in order.
The big thing that I realized as I've been going through Magnum PI again is, do you remember the show Scorpion? Is this a show that anybody but I... Okay, thank you.
Oh, man, I do remember. What a wild pull.
My name is Devon Decker. I have the 4th highest IQ in the world.
Okay.
No, I wanted to just do... That whole opening is ridiculous. 197. Einstein's was 160. Like, okay, Walter O'Brien. I want to know how, based on the cases of Walter O'Brien's Scorpion is. That's my next Wikipedia wormhole when I can't sleep. is I'm gonna just research Walter O'Brien.
Nice.
But I've been rewatching that show because like it was on Pop Network and it was nice to like put on before we record, and then I'd go upstairs after we record and then there'd be like another episode on and I'd be like, that's nice, right? And I like Scorpion. I really like the people in it. I like the actors. It's got Eddie K. Thomas there, and you know how I feel about Eddie K. Thomas if you've listened to the Say Report, right? Big fan of Paul Finch.
Yeah, and if you've listened to any of the American Pie episodes.
Yeah. So you know, I'm a big fan of Eddie K. Thomas. He's also an American Dad. New American Dads are coming out on March 27th. So I'm excited about that. I really hope that it happens and it doesn't go the way of Chad season 2 or Miracle Worker season 4. My God, when I think about what Warner Brothers Discovery has done.
Yeah. Every day we find more and more bodies.
It hurts my heart. It hurts my heart, Sejohn. But yeah, so I've been watching Scorpion. And watching it, like, not really bingey, but, you know, like 2 episodes a day at most, I'm realizing how un-CBS the show was for a show that was on CBS. Like, it very, very heavily wants you to have watched every episode leading up to this new episode. And it does not care if you missed an episode. It just barrels forward. And also, like, the changes between the syndication and the original airing stuff is crazy. But I've been enjoying
CBS has always done that, though. CBS has always had some really crazy ass edits later on to like remove stuff they didn't like or that didn't sit well with people.
Completely changed the story. Like this one. This the episode with, first of all, the episode itself is an hour and 10 minutes long, but it's a single episode. Like, so it aired as a single episode when it first aired. They didn't break it up because it was broken up into other countries, but not in America. They're just like, special Scorpion event, we're showing this episode. And the end of the normal episode is just like, oh, everything's happy. And then it cuts to Walter talking to Kevin Weissman about, you know, I kind of want to try to be more human. And then in syndication, so it's already this double length episode, right? That is just going to be slammed into syndication. So they cut out a bunch of stuff, but then they add a scene at the end where Sylvester, the like youngest member of the team who's like a comic book fan, gives all of his comic books to a kid that he saved during the episode. And I'm just like, that's a completely different storyline for the Sylvester character. And that's only in syndication. I don't know. It's been, but yeah. But the thing that I realized is Magnum PI killed Scorpion. Because Justin Lin is the person behind both of the shows.
Yeah. So
I imagine that like CBS was like, look, you're getting good numbers, but it's not really vibing with us. Do you want to do the Magnum PI show? It's one or the other. And either you get on Magnum PI or we cancel Scorpion anyway. So watching Magnum PI feels a lot like Scorpion, but, you know, they're all cosplaying as Magnum PI characters. Like in a really weird way that I was not expecting, like going from one to the other. And
no, the connected CBS universe. We're not doing it.
No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. I promise that we're not going to do that. No, it's not even like connected. The real connection is that in the 5th episode of Scorpion, they meet Hetty from NCIS LA, and that's just weird. Because it's like, they're both in LA, but like they never cross paths with the with NCIS again, as they're doing all of these federal things. Federal things where like they're saving Navy submarines.
I was gonna say it has to be at sea, but I guess that works.
There's at least 2 other episodes where submarines are involved, and they're Navy submarines. They're not just random submarines.
Those personal submarines, those cigarette boat submarines.
But yeah, so Magnum PI is really good. I guess Animal Control. I can talk about Animal Control, the new Joel McHale show on Fox.
If you really feel like you need to.
Has anyone else watching it? Anyone else watching this show? Just me? Feels like it's just me.
Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody know?
Anybody? Animal Control. Joel McHale. Community. One of the draws to the show was not even that. Vella Lovell, who most people know from My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but I know from Mr. Mayor. Rest in peace, Mr. Mayor. I voted for you. I mean, it was fraudulent because I don't live in LA, but I voted for you. His chief of staff runs the animal control office, and she's basically just playing the same character. But that show has got a lot of heart in it. I really enjoy it. And the number of sitcom tropes that they have knocked out in the first 4 episodes literally blows my mind.
Nice.
So it's like they know what they're doing, and I'm enjoying the crap out of that one. That's on Hulu. If you got the Hulu, you can check out Animal Control. I like it. It also
gonna be an ad for anything else now? Any other shows we want to prop up that aren't gonna pay us any money?
What? No, I mean, I want to prop them up so that they get more episodes. Because I don't think Animal Control is going to get a season 2. I don't think that Peacock is going to survive.
This is not a Save Peacock podcast. I'm sorry.
No, it's not that. This is what happens when we record late in the afternoon. And before I record, I asphyxiate a beer. Because I start laughing as I'm doing a shot, and then it's just all in my lungs. That's not where beer goes, Sejohn.
You didn't asphyxiate. You didn't strangle the beer.
Oh, I guess, what did I do? Nebulize it?
I think
I inhaled it. Aspirate. Yeah, aspirate is the word. Yeah, I didn't asphyxiate it. I didn't choke out the Guinness. It choked me, though. Some first. I had to spit it all up. Probably time to end this episode as I tell that story.
Yeah,
all right, I know.
I was pretty much done once you started just recapping episodes of Scorpion, so...
Oh, this is why we don't record late at night, ladies and gentlemen. Tell your friends if you want to know why we try to record in the morning. I'm better in the AM. I know that as a fact.
Oh, man.
Anything from you, Sejohn? Anything else to add before we send this one away?
No, I mean, you even took away my throw to you because I was going to say, if you wanted to reach out to Devon at Devon D. Decker, but you took that halfway through the episode from me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, you could still say that part. Should we talk about Brendan Fraser or do we wait till May?
We got an entire month to talk about this.
Okay. Here's what I will say. One, you find us on Twitter at The Say Report and send your messages for the show or for Sejohn specifically, since he's no longer on there on a personal account. We're fully aware of what happened with Brendan Fraser, and we're choosing not to talk about it. So don't inundate our inbox with stuff at The Say Report on Twitter about it.
But no, I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, no. If you want to reach out, what did you throw to me, or what did you steal from me earlier? What did you want to know about that? You put
I wanted to know about people who are on Peacock, but then you said we're not a safe Peacock podcast.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's cordon off all the Peacock talk to Devon's at Devon D. Decker on Twitter. If you want to talk about Peacock, we're not gonna do it on the show. So talk to him on Twitter about it instead.
Thank you. I look forward to your messages. All right, so one last time, rest in power, Lance, and Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.